So again, this layer up at the top, I just placed a white layer just so you can see it separated from the rest. And this is just making the graphic right from there. So that's the basic part, aside from shading anything and trying to create some of the images to represent that piece. So just by clicking and dragging, I can hide all that and go back to this section. So this is the base. Put a little bit of a tone around the lettering, just a outer glow is what it's called, and that separates that piece. So taking a look at these layers, this is what this outer glow is right here. So it's just kind of giving you as many things in the Photoshop piece to work from. And these are all in separate layers, but I want it all to be on one layer, so I'm just going to go to the above everything, give myself a new layer, and then in the keystroke I'm just going to use Command Option Shift and the letter E, and what that does is places everything on this image. So I've given myself a layer above it, just filled it with white so I could set this on top. So now this has everything that's on the graphic on one piece. So it just makes it a little bit easier to manipulate. I know from the side section, so I'll turn that off. I know from the side panel, it has the same graphic on the front, just minus the name. So all I'm going to do is to come back to this section, and it's just a matter of trying to keep everything organized on your piece. So down below it has, I'll turn this off, so now you can still see this graphic. So I'm just going to turn the text off and go ahead and give myself I'm working beneath this white layer, just trying to show you how it's organized. Put a new layer and do the same thing, Command Option Shift and the letter E, and now I just drag this above the white layer. So now I have a couple of graphics to work with on this page. So the first one is this, and I don't need all this extra blue, but I'll just take the image and make it a little bit smaller so you can see what's happening here. I could take the rectangle tool and just draw the shape of what I want it to be, encapsulating all that part of the graphic. So I'm using the space bar to move it around and letting that piece go. Again, if I deleted that, it's taking that piece out. So I'm just going to go to Selection and just go to Select Inverse or Command Shift D. And now when I hit this, it'll take that part out. So this makes it a little bit easier. I'll set it over here and then click back on the picture that I brought in from the PDF file. And this is just showing it as reference. So you can see it's this panel that I'm trying to make, or make it even better than what it looks like there. So while it's selected, it's showing the bounding box right here, and I can use the Edit Transform keys, and you'll see that you have distort and perspective and everything like that right here. But all the keystrokes, using the Command Shift and Option key in separately or together, allows you to manipulate this. So if I just click on this, it'll make it go side to side, top to bottom, scales it, rotates it, and if I hold the Command key down and click on the midpoint, it allows it to go that direction as a perspective almost. Actually just skewing it. Perspective is a little different. So I can drop that down. I can still treat this as one shape and kind of build it up there. So it's kind of facing that angle, and I can take the Option key again and just taper it separately so each corner goes on its own click of the mouse, and do that. So I can try to simulate that part. And while it's still highlighted, if you hit OK, it's going to make a bounding box go vertical. So before I do that warp, you have to select separately. So there's the warp, and it puts down on a grid, and each point has two handles to it that allow you to curve it. So I'm just going to curve some of this just to try to get a little bit of a section. And you only have one chance of this, so it's always a good idea to duplicate the layer in case down the line you want to change it. And these handles, you can see it stretches it. There's two handles in the corners, and if you grab the middle of it, it does a little bit of movement as well. So it's treating this as a grid there. So I'm just going with that. So I'll go ahead and click that one. So that's using the initial part that has that section. The second one, here's the layer, and this is going to be the side panel. So I'm just going to shift key to turn it down a little bit. I'm going to drag it above this for a second. Keep in mind you have to accept what you've done before you can do a separate function there. So there it is. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to take the rectangle, only this time I'm just going to go for a narrower piece and select inverse and just hit delete. So now I have this, and then deselect everything, so now I have this part. The only thing by doing so, I didn't take off all of that. So I just take the marquee to take this piece off. So now I have the side panel. I still have auto select for the layer, so I'm just going to switch this over here a little bit. Okay, so now I'm just going to line this up, still using the command and just grabbing the corner because that's going to distort it. So put it as close as I can. I can always just put this behind the layer. Grab that. I can kind of see this a little bit. So there's that section. And just trying to do the best I can to get the look that I'm looking for. And now I'm just going to go into Edit, Transform, and Warp. And just arch these in a little bit. Don't have to do it too perfect because I can adjust this. Again, I can hold the option, let you move that piece right there. Okay. So there's that section. So just hit OK. And this is in front of this. I'm just going to drag this layer behind it and let this piece be up at the top. Now you notice there's this little extra part of the fold of the bag. So to do that, I'm just going to take a pen tool. That's very similar. Up at the top you have three options: path, and just move that over a little bit. Back down here so I can see it. Take the pen tool. And keep in mind if you're trying to find the edge of this and that's too blue, I can do a couple of things. I can just minimize down the opacity of that to help me see through it. And the pen tool works very similar to Illustrator. I'm just going to copy that. I'm just going to go right up to this, back that up a bit. And in your Paths palette, you have to double click to save it, give it a title, or at least just put something down there. That'll give you that edge. And there's a selection tool for the path tool below it, direct selection and path tools, so it'll let you drag this down a little bit so you can see it. And you can always go back and manipulate it again with the direct selection tool. There's handles and everything, very similar to that. And depending on how you do it, at the bottom of the path tool there's a selection space down here. I'll go back to the layers. I'm going to get a new layer just in the selection. And just take a paintbrush and use the bracket keys to make it bigger. And just paint over the top of this just to see what it looks like. And since it's a layer, I have the percentage down a little bit. Just kind of drag that in there. And I can always just default it, make the brush bigger, go to the black. You can see it's going behind everything there. So it's just kind of giving that selection. any pieces that are here. So this layer, for example, I have the eraser tool, and it looks like an eraser, so you just take a look at it. You can clip off the back of that, showing this part. So this can also blend together in the same layer, just using it to build that section up. And if I want to bend this again, I can still go back to that layer, up into here. And whether I use the pen tool, the eraser tool, or any combination that you can put together, that's what this part does. So here's the pen tool. Let me do that again. Start right there. So just trying to show you as many different ways. So again, here's the path. Just hit the selection and either make sure you're on the right layer. That's always the trick. Coming back and forth here. Let's see. So here's the selection. Here's the layer. And just hit delete. So you can kind of see that. And if it's too hard-edged, you can always soften this up. But here's the eraser tool again. And the eraser has all the options. You can use brushes and everything that's involved. So you can just use that piece. And then, with this side panel selected, let's see if it'll work here for me. This is the side panel. If I want that to be darker or lighter, the burn, dodge, and burn tool are always a couple good tools to use. So here it is in the shadows and the midtones, so I can go along that edge and darken that piece. So you can kind of see how that's brought up. There's a couple ways to do it, but that's one. And I can do the opposite on this and do the dodge tool on this layer, which is right here. So here's the dodge tool. It's just kind of lightening up that section. Increase this part. And that'll lighten that piece up. So it's just a matter of putting all that together, and then these two sections I might merge together. This part here. And you can lock those pixels if you'd like to burn and dodge that section. And you can even use the paintbrush to get some of the coloring back into it. Opacity for that. Section. So I'm just going to back it up, and so I have two layers that make up that bag right now. So I'll shift through those. I'm just going to duplicate them so I have a copy of them. Merge them together. Duplicate it one more time. And for the background, taking the shift, I'll hide this guy. So now I have this part as a shadow. Make sure I have that. And that'll give you this graphic that's behind it. Let's see if I did this right. One thing here. So this layer, I just want to make sure that I have the opacity turned up. Let's see. Yeah, so there's the shadow placed off the top of